In the quiet hours before dawn, under the faint pulse of unseen emergency lights, a body was found. The rain-slicked asphalt reflected the silent, spinning colors. Death was confirmed on the scene. Paramedics declared it, police documented it. But there was one problem, a massive, unexplainable problem. There was no crime scene, no signs of a struggle, no discarded weapon, not a single drop of blood. It was as if the person had simply ceased to exist, right there on the empty street. But people don't just stop existing. Something had happened somewhere. The body was the end of the story, but the beginning was nowhere to be found. How does someone die without leaving behind a place where it happened? The first call came in just as the sky was turning a dark, bruised purple. First responders arrived to a scene that felt staged, almost theatrical in its stillness. Flashlights cut through the pre-dawn gloom, their beams sweeping across the ground, searching for anything out of place. But everything was perfectly in place. The victim's shoes were clean, without a speck of mud or dirt, as if they had floated to this spot. Their clothes were neat, not torn or disheveled from a fight. Evidence markers were placed cautiously, almost hesitantly, beside items that offered no clues. An untouched wallet, a set of keys. Nothing suggested violence or panic. The victim's hands were clean, devoid of the defensive wounds you'd expect from someone fighting for their life. It was a chilling contradiction. The body appeared carefully placed, not fallen. The location, a quiet public area, didn't match the conclusion of the medical examiner. This wasn't where they died, but if not here, then where? Every crime has a location, a place where things went wrong. A room, a car, an alleyway, a point on a map where events unfolded. This one didn't. As investigators dug deeper, the absence of evidence became the most haunting clue of all. There was no blood, not on the body, not on the ground. This meant the fatal injury occurred elsewhere, in a controlled environment. There were no witnesses. The street was residential, but no one saw or heard a thing. No car screeching away, no muffled shouts. And most critically, there was no weapon. Without a weapon, you can't connect an act to a person. The forensic team combed the area for fibers, for footprints, for anything. They found nothing. No drag marks to suggest the body was moved. No tire tracks from a vehicle pulling up close. It was a blank slate. The most fundamental piece of any investigation, the where, was simply gone. At police headquarters, the investigation began to collapse before it even started. Detectives huddled over maps, trying to trace the victim's last known movements. They replayed timelines over and over, looking for a gap, a deviation from routine. But the victim's day was ordinary. Work, home, a call with a friend. Then nothing. Hours of CCTV footage from surrounding streets were reviewed. They saw cars passing, people walking their dogs, the rhythm of a normal night. But they never saw the victim. They never saw a suspicious vehicle. They never saw anyone dumping a body. The cameras, blinking their little red lights, had recorded nothing useful. The evidence boards, usually filled with connections and leads, were covered in question marks. Standard investigative logic had broken down. Without a crime scene, there was no primary source of evidence. Without evidence, there was no timeline. And without a timeline, you can't even begin to build a list of suspects. The case was a ghost. As the official investigation stalled, theories began to emerge from the void, each more disturbing than the last. The most obvious theory was that the body was moved. Someone committed the crime in one location and transported the victim to this spot to mislead police. This suggested a killer who was calm, methodical, and had access to a vehicle. They were smart enough to choose a location with no surveillance and to move the body during the dead of night. Another theory was that the crime scene had been professionally cleaned. Imagine a room scrubbed clean of all biological evidence. Surfaces wiped down with bleach, carpets replaced, walls repainted. This would require an incredible amount of effort, time and forensic knowledge. It painted a picture of a killer who was not just trying to get away with it, but was erasing the event from existence. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated, almost scientific act. This perpetrator didn't just clean up. They sterilized the scene, leaving investigators with nothing but a body and a dead end. This leads us away from the procedural and into the psychological. Why would someone go to such extreme lengths? A typical criminal might try to hide a body, but erasing the entire crime scene is something different. It speaks to a level of control and forethought that is deeply unsettling. This wasn't an act of panic. This was preparation. This was a plan executed with terrifying precision. Think about the mindset required to commit an act and then to calmly, meticulously remove every single trace that had ever happened. This requires a person who can compartmentalize, who can operate without emotion, and who understands exactly what investigators look for. They didn't just outsmart the police. They exploited the very system of investigation. The empty rooms, the silent corridors, the locking doors, they all point to a killer who is a ghost in the machine, someone who knows how to move through the world without leaving a shadow. The most frightening part isn't the crime itself, but the chilling intelligence behind it. As weeks turned into months, and months into years, the case file grew thicker with reports that all said the same thing: no new leads. The evidence boxes, containing the victim's pristine clothing and personal effects, were eventually labeled and moved to an archive, joining countless other cold cases. The initial flurry of activity faded into a quiet, resigned acceptance. There were no arrests. There was no justice. For the family, there was no closure, only a permanent question mark hanging over their lives. The absence of a crime scene had created a perfect wall, a barrier that even the most dedicated investigators could not break through. A case cannot proceed on a vacuum. Without a place to anchor the crime, the entire chain of justice dissolved. The story had an ending, but no beginning and no middle. And this brings us to a deeply unsettling realization. Maybe this case isn't unique. Maybe there are others. Crimes designed from the start to be invisible. Think about all the anonymous spaces in our world. Empty office buildings after hours, vacant apartments, remote industrial parks. How many places exist where something terrible could happen, and the world would never know? We move through our lives surrounded by ordinary places that might hide extraordinary secrets. The person next to you in a crowd, the neighbor you barely know, the car that passes you on a dark road. We assume a shared reality, but some people operate by a different set of rules. They have learned how to commit the perfect crime, not by being clever, but by being invisible. They have figured out that the most dangerous crimes aren't the ones that leave a mystery, but the ones that leave no trace at all. If you have a theory about this case, let us know in the comments below. Like this video if it made you think, and share it with someone who loves a deep mystery. And be sure to subscribe, because some stories don't want to be forgotten, and it's our job to make sure they aren't. Thanks for watching.